Viewers beware! You're in for a scare! God, I just love saying that. I don't know why. I think it's just, I knew when I started to cover Goosebumps books, that's just the first dumb thing that popped into my head. Hey everyone, I'm Zach and you're watching Middle Fantasy, and today we're going to be doing something very special. Today we're going to be covering the first Goosebumps book on this channel. Now, I wanted this to be special, I wanted this to be unique, because for me, I love Goosebumps. I'm a product of Goosebumps. If it wasn't for Goosebumps, you wouldn't see these books back here because they're the books that really got me to read. So why don't we talk about the book that really kicked off Goosebumps? Today we're going to be talking all about Welcome to Dead House. This is the first book in the classic Goosebumps run. This is one of the first ones that came out. It was in 1992. It came out the same year as Stay Out of the Basement and Monster Blood. So why don't we talk about it? But first, I actually have a weird email that I got. Oh my god, my great uncle's dead. At least I got a house though. Oh wait, then I'll have to move and, oh. Well, I guess I'll arrange that after this review, I guess. But why don't we kick into Welcome to Dead House. So what is the basic synopsis of Welcome to Dead House? Well, we follow two kids, Josh and Amanda, and their parents as they move to Dark Falls in the middle of Maine? Undescript place, but they're going to a place called Dark Falls. It's right next to Mutilation Mesa and Spook Central, Idaho, I guess. I don't know where this is, but they're going to Dark Falls because they've pretty much of wanting a new house. It turns out that their dad's great uncle has passed away and has bestowed them a really nice house, pretty much free of charge. I'm also sure that their dad probably also gets emails from a Nigerian prince asking him for money so we can send them more money. That's the type of stuff that we're working with here. But so they kind of move into this new house and things start to be weird because they see people in the windows, they feel like there's people in their house. And the most creepy thing about them is that they pretty much live right next to a cemetery and weird things are happening. And this is a story that I think this is more of a traditional ghost story. Actually, out of all the Goosebumps books, I see this more as the one that you would read in front of the fire and really get scared, because when it comes to this book, right off the bat, this is probably the scariest out of the Goosebumps books. I feel like some people might consider this the black sheep because they don't really know, is this supposed to just be straight up horrifying or silly? This is just a straight up horrifying book, and we'll get into why that is. But before I do, I gotta talk about this beautiful cover. I love this cover. This is one of the quintessential Goosebumps covers in my mind. It is burned directly into my eyelids. If I close my eyes, I see this. What can I say about it? This is Tim Jacobus pretty much firing on all cylinders at this point in time. I just love all the colors when it comes to this. I love the house. It reminds me a lot of the Haunted Mansion. Maybe that's the reason why I like it so much, is it actually reminds me of the original theatrical poster for the Haunted Mansion movie. I think that might have been the best part of the whole Haunted Mansion movie. But I'm not really like a art person, so I can't really give you like, why did this work, as a composition? But I love the colors. I just love how those look. And as a kid, I remember this distinctly. I thought the house was on fire because of all the oranges, and the purples are so cool. Like, I just love this aesthetic of how he's doing this Spooky Duke's house. Though it took me so long as an adult, actually up until I was an adult, to realize there's a spooky man in the window. And that scared me more because I was like, who the heck is this person? He reminds me of the villain that's in Clash of the Titans. Yeah, it's just real weird, but for me, I feel like this is as Halloween gets. Even without it being really Halloween is this cover. Though I feel like the problem with this cover is the simple fact of the tagline. It might be the worst tagline in all of Goosebumps. It will just kill you. What? What the heck is that supposed to mean? The house is supposed to kill you? Or is it supposed to be the spooky monster? Or is it supposed to be all the creepy monsters in the town that will just kill you? And that's kind of the thing when it comes to this. I love the little taglines that they have, but this one is really bad. So what do I think about this book? Now, when it comes to Welcome to Dead House, it isn't my favorite Goosebumps book, but it's one that I always revisit for many reasons, mostly because it's number one. Usually I'm like, I'm going to do a Goosebumps marathon. I'll just start with the first book, and then I read the first book, and then I kind of stop and then forget that I'm kind of wanting to do a marathon, and so on and so forth. And that's kind of the stuff that ends up happening a little bit. But for this book, I just remember seeing it so much in my life. But yet, what do I think of this book? I think out of all of them, it is the black sheep of the family just a little bit. What I mean by that is this book has horrifying moments in it that can only be in the first couple books, because we see this in this book, as well as if we go to State of the Basement, there is body horror, there's kids with their faces melting off, there are skeletons with green skin and maggots falling out. This is, if you're a kid and you're reading this, I can see why this probably gave kids nightmares, because all the nightmare scenes in this are really, really spooky, and I love that type of stuff. I think the primal fear of this book is the fear of moving, but also it's probably the fear of being the outsider of the town, and that's something as a person that moved a lot. I think R.l.Stine does a really good job at conveying that, especially a kid's fear of moving from town to town, not really knowing what to do, as well as making new friends, fitting in. And that's kind of the scary thing about this, is he really does capture that feeling of moving to a new town. Even though this whole thing is a sham, it's still kind of spooky, and this book actually has a very slow uptake. What I mean by that is the horror doesn't really start until halfway through. They don't even really get to the house until about the halfway point. And even then, this book is also surprisingly long. Even though it's like 120 pages, the chapters are spread out, where when it comes to a traditional Goosebumps book, you don't really get that. So every couple seconds I'd be like, okay, when's the chapter breaking? Because sometimes I might have to answer a phone call, or maybe I want to take a sip of water. Because for me, I'm a weirdo, and I set goals for myself. Like, I'll take a sip of water, but I have to finish this chapter first. And when I die of dehydration, when I read a book that has a chapter that's probably like 1,000 pages, I'll just be dead. But this is kind of the thing when it comes to this book, is it's kind of spaced out in an interestingly weird way that kind of will probably get rectified as the series goes on. But I think the biggest problem that I had with this was the villains and the monsters in this are really dumb. And we'll get into why I hate them very, very soon, but it's probably the weakest part of this. If you're expecting the world's greatest monsters, you're gonna have almost like an identity crisis, because my brain hurts every time I think about them and their plan. Now, this will be the spoiler section of it, because I'm gonna be talking kind of about what are my favorite moments. For me, I think my favorite moments of this whole book is that, for me personally, this book has a lot of stakes and has a lot of gusto. What I mean by that is the threat in this, even though their plan is silly, the threat is the most real out of most of the Goosebumps books. For one thing, I'm about to upset a lot of people. The dog in the book dies. Petey is horribly murdered. And this is pretty much like, this is just movie 101. This is the weird thing. People are more attached to dogs than people dying, maybe even kids dying, but there's a whole website called doesthedogdie.com. And I guarantee you, if I Google it right now, he might be the first result. Let's check. Okay, I don't know if that worked or not. Maybe this might be a comedy joke, but yeah, the dog dies, and for a kid's book, this is horrifying. I have a dog. I wished I had a dog when I was a kid. I would have just been devastated. But that's kind of my favorite moments of this are just the sheer horror that comes out of just the weird descriptions of the book. Here's a good example. I couldn't see beneath our hair. We had no faces. Our skin was gone, and only our gray-green skin was left. Bits of flesh clung to my bony cheeks. There was only a deep black socket where my eyes would have been. The four of us were all dead, sat eating in silence. Our plates, I saw, were filled with small bones. A big platter in the center of the table was piled high with gray-green bones, human-looking bones. Yeah, see, that's horrifying. There's more examples of this, such as Ray moved his arms to shield himself from the light, but I could not see what was happening to him. The light had already done its damage. Ray's skin seemed to be melting off. His whole face sagged, then fell off, dropping off of his skull. Okay, I'm sorry. Again, kid's book, faces melting off like the Ark of the Covenant. This is rad. I love this type of dumb stuff. And this is the stuff that R.l.Stine shines at. And what I mean by this is that R.l.Stine's the person that he's really good at descriptive horror, but when it comes to jump scares, he's just like okay, because that's kind of the whole gimmick, is each chapter is a jump scare. But this book really does descriptive horror in a way, especially to a kid, that's horrifying. I think the best way he does it is through his prose. But that's kind of like some of my favorite parts of it, are kind of these descriptions or these weird moments of actual horrifying nature. The problem is that the villains in this are really dumb, because the town of Dark Falls, everyone in it is dead. All the kids are dead. The parents are dead. Pretty much the real estate agent that gave them the home is dead. And the reason why they're dead is they don't call them straight out vampires. I think this is supposed to be more like the Last Man on Earth. I think of like, they're not really vampires, but they're just vampires with extra steps, meaning that they need blood to live and they can't be in direct sunlight. I guess, you skip the whole, you need to be invited in and crossing water and vice versa, things with like garlic. But they need to get fresh blood every year, because it turns out that the town was built on like a plastics factory, that there was like a horrible accident that turned everyone into vampires in name only, I guess. But that's kind of like the horrifying thing. But the reason why their plan is dumb is because when a family comes in, they have to keep doing the whole, oh, my great uncle died, so I gave you this free house. They kill the family, and then the family becomes like them. There's going to be a serious problem 30, 60 years down the line when they have too many people in Dark Falls. And after a while, I feel like the whole great Uncle Charlie routine doesn't quite work as much anymore. And they're just going to make more mouths to feed, to have like, you're just going to have to bus in people with like big old families to have to come in. Like, does your family have 16 or 17 children? Yes, then you can get this house. Great Uncle Charlie died. What if you didn't have one and you asked everyone in your family? Well, sucks to be you. And I mean, that's like, you have to think about this like the kids' logic of, okay, this is how they get them there. But that was kind of the concern about that. Though I feel like the monsters aren't the scariest thing, I think, for me, when it comes to the children's fears, because Goosebumps, each book is almost like an allegory for a primary kid's fear. And this one's all about moving to a new town, but also being a stranger and trying to figure out how to fit in, because once again, this book has a very slow start of them even getting to the house and befriending all the kids. It doesn't happen for quite a while into the book. I mean, it's a small book, but then, again, in the greater narrative of the short story, it takes a while. And R.l.Stine really sets up the whole, they're leaving, Josh is upset, he has a best friend, and they're like, we'll write every day. This is, I guess the internet did exist back then, but this wasn't like they couldn't just Skype or video chat. This is like they'd have to drive 4 hours to see each other. And this is stuff that, as an adult now, actually kind of made me a little emotional thinking about this, because it's a sad type of concept of when you actually moved away back in the 90s, you were moving away. And sometimes, like now, I can only imagine, like, I'm moving 2 hours away, but we'll play like Fortnite, or we'll play video games together, or we'll, voice chat on Discord. Back then, this was an actual people fear, as well as going to a house and nothing works. It's funny because I was like looking at this book now as an adult and seeing the parents complaining about the house and how like there's things, maybe there might be rats or the plumbing might be bad. I'm just thinking, oh wait, this is the adult fear in this situation. And I love that type of stuff, is kind of seeing the juxtaposition as an adult. Oh no, is the whole house effed up and there's no more copper wiring, or there's like rats in the walls. But to a kid, it's more of the fear of fitting in and being a stranger in a strange land, especially when it comes to the kids that they meet and how, they befriend them, but they never feel like they're a part of them. Obviously, the plan is we're going to turn them into spooky, not vampires and steal their blood and their flesh. But you still have that feeling of pretty much, you're playing kickball and everyone's making all these jokes, but you don't understand the jokes because you have to have been there your entire life. And that's kind of the thing that I love about this, is R.l.Stine really does portray this in a very interesting way. What I mean by this, and the interesting part is, you really feel like you're moving with them and kind of the fears that go along with moving, especially being an 11-year-old. And that's the stuff I have to give him credit for. I'm sure as to a kid, moving is a really scary thing, and this is a book where I guess this also becomes more of you move to a strange place with strange customs, and you're just like, I don't know what to do. In this neighborhood, everyone could be vampires or mummies or werewolves, but do you go along with it? But in the end, They defeat the monsters and things kind of go back to normal, or do they? And overall, I love Welcome to Dead House. Out of all the books, it's a very quick read. It's very scary, like I said, it's very graphic, so if you're not into body horror, people's faces melting off, dogs dying, or really, books that have very a slow wind-up. There are other Goosebumps books that do this really well, but this book is interesting in the way of how it portrays just the dialogue as well as the descriptions of the body horror. I love that type of stuff. The villain's plan makes no sense because it's dumb for many, many reasons, most of just the longevity of it. But this is a very solid read. And it's fun because when it comes to this, if we go into Goosebumps Gold, which was going to be a series that was going to be released, there was actually supposed to be a sequel to this, which was going to be Christmas themed. And I would have loved to have seen that and how that was going to play out. It's one of those fun ones to have. I think the cover is great. I think the story at times is actually scary. And at other times, again, can be goofy. But that's a Goosebumps book. Sometimes it's serious, sometimes it's goofy. But at the end of the day, we have fun. Now that brings me to the end of this video. Well, I still have to pack up because I'm moving to Dark Falls. No, wait, Dark Falls. There's probably no correlation to what we're doing, except I did get an email from a Nigerian prince. I gotta send him money, and he'll give me more money. So this is gonna be a win-win for me. New house and more money. What could be wrong? Well, everyone, like always, may your food and drink ever be tasteful, and may your books be filled with fantasy and adventure. Bye, everyone. See ya.